it's Liz Yuille from Old Stables Crafts. Thank you very much for joining me again today. This is the card that we are making today, and today is actually the last of our Halloween series. So I thought I would go out with a teeny weeny bit of a bang, using the detailed gate die, which is gorgeous. I've been looking at it and looking at it and looking at it and finally getting around to using it. But this is also a Let's Get Inky project, because I've used ink in the background, some of which is clearer to see than others, but you'll get to see the background, and obviously if you didn't want to add the gate, you wouldn't have to. So it's a bit of a, what in the UK we'd call a two-for-one. And then on the inside I've just stamped a little bit of Billy Don't. So let me show you how I have done this. I'm going to start with a nice scrappy bit of paper. All the measurements as ever will be on the associated blog post, which is linked below. I have already pre-cut the gate. I would say that, let me turn it over so you can see it properly. I would say that the gate is quite, it's not tricky to cut, but it is a very, very intricate die, and most big shots, and mine is one of those, have areas that have got better pressure than others, so you do have to run it backwards and forwards a few times just to get it to cut out fully. For the UK, this is just narrow enough to go round the card. You can see here I've actually wrapped it around a piece of cardstock, so I've gone around the back there, but it's only just wide enough, so you'll see that the gap between my card and the edge of my card base is not huge. So that's, in the US it's not such there's not such a precision on that, but in the UK it is just a smidge. So on the subject of which, I can't remember the measurements, but that's fine because they're on my blog post, so they'll be linked below. But this is slightly bigger than my usual card base. I'm thinking it's probably it's probably 4 inches wide. In fact, here's a ruler. It'd be easier if I just measured it, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's just it's 4 inches wide. And I think this is just a smidge longer than normal. Yeah, it's 5 and... No, actually it's about the same. So this is 5 5/8 still, and it's just 4 inches wide rather than 3 7/8. So it's just a teeny weeny bit wider than usual, just to get that wrap. This is my normal size, and if I do that, you can see that it's, well, you maybe can't, if I squish it over to one side, you can see that it's not quite wide enough. Anyway, let's stop procrastinating and get on with it. So this is very vanilla. So this is my usual first layer mat, which is 3 7/8 by 5 5/8, and as I say, measurements are on the blog post. I've got a rich raspberry card base, just for a change. So that's half a piece of A5 scored down the middle and then folded. So that's a standard A6 card. And then, as I say, my slightly odd size, for me, odd size base. And lots of sponge brayers. So I have labelled them with the colours. They do stain. Now this, I've been using rich raspberry, but actually it was stained using cherry cobbler, which interestingly stained it neon pink, which was kind of odd. I am using a slightly strange stamp set. I'm using High Tide, which is how I've got the birds. Obviously in High Tide they are seagulls. I'm thinking of them as possibly crows. I'd like to say that was an original idea, but it wasn't. Good old Pinterest. And then I'm using the rat from Spooky Cat. Now obviously you don't need to go and have two, well you do, because you need the Happy Halloween as well. So yeah, if you've got birds somewhere else that you could have flying, or dies from bats, you could have cut some dies and use those instead. But that's the stamp set that I'm using. Then I'm using black memento for the sentiment and the birds, and then rich raspberry, night of navy, tangerine tango, and chocolate chip. This is pumpkin pie. I'm not using pumpkin pie, and I'm using tangerine tango just to soften some of the edges a bit. If it goes a bit over the top, that will become apparent, I hope. So what else I have got here? Here's one I made earlier. This is a post-it that I've punched out. Now, when you punch a post-it on its own, and this is using the 1-inch circle punch, when you punch, yes, 1 inch, when you punch a post-it, you tend to get this frayed edge, which I actually, for this project, like. So I'm going to pop that down where I want my moon, my blood moon, to be. And I'm going to start with rich raspberry, so that's that one. Let's pop those over to the side for the moment. So get that going. And the key to the sponge brayer, can you see where I am? Yes, is lots of rolling. Don't go backwards and forwards, because if you do, let me see if I can follow that round. It doesn't actually get all the way to the end, and you end up with these lines, and you don't want lines. Lines is not good. So I'm just gently, to start with, adding some ink. Now, why do I say gently? Because again, if you go too hard, you'll get lines, and it's very difficult to get rid of the lines once they're there. So do be gentle, and don't go too mad. It's definitely a less is more, because you can add more if you need it. But yes, you see, I've caused a line by going back into too dark. Now that I've got the layers built up a bit more and less ink on my roller, I can put a bit more pressure on, and I particularly want the area around the moon to be reasonably dark. And come down a bit, and this is where I am actually putting quite a bit of pressure on. Another thing to be aware of, gently roll your ink. Do not add too much pressure when you're adding your ink, or you will rip your pad. I know this because it happened once at one of my classes. I managed to catch it before it was too bad, but yeah, it was a new ink pad as well, so that was a bit scary. Right, so that's that one. I may need to bring some more in, but Night of Navy. And again, we're just going to come in gently, and we're just trying to build up a bit of colour. I don't want to come too far down with the colour at this stage. I want there to be a bit of a, as if the sun's sort of just set. So I don't want it to be too dark down here. I want a bit of a graduation. And I like the raspberry for this because it adds a bit of a red tone, because there is quite a lot of that red in the raspberry. It's not an obvious red, but there is red dye in there. Do a bit of that angle. Just add a bit more around the moon. So that's the navy, and then I'm going to bring in the tangerine tango just at the bottom, just a wee bit. This is possibly a step you don't need, but I just liked a little bit more of a sort of redder tone. So that's that. You get, in the brayers, you do get 4 heads in a set, so you get 2 handles and 4 of these heads, and they do just pull out, so you just pull them out so you can change them over. So as you get 4, you can actually do this with one set of brayers, but as I have 2, I'm using 2. Right, so for the last bit, which is the bit where it does sort of get hidden, but not really, I've just cut a piece of paper, and this is the back of a shipping confirmation. I've just cut a piece of paper to form a hill. Now we do this quite often the other way round, to do hills where you're trying to build colour up for your sky, but you can do it this way around as well. And this is chocolate chip, and because this is going at the bottom, and I don't actually mind too much if I have lines at the bottom here, I want to come reasonably far down so I don't go. I want there to be a difference between. I don't want to lose this nice soft orange, is basically what I'm saying. So this I am actually going to put quite a lot of pressure on, because it's a smaller area. I'm not going to get the lines to the same degree. There is a line here, but I'm not worried about that, and I will show you why in a minute. So at this point, as I say, the lines are less of an issue for me, because I want a really solid colour. And then I'm going to pull that up and move it a wee bit. Where do I want it? Indecision. There, I think. And here I'm going to really layer it on. So I want this to be almost completely solid chocolate chip. Now, the other thing you could use are the sponges. You could use sponge daubers. Take you a bit longer, obviously. But yeah, so sponges are fine. Sponge daubers, fine too. And there we are with our scene. Now, as I say, you could just leave it there. It's a nice scene, actually. I might have to use that for something else, as in the idea for something else. So that's our basic scene, and then let's do the reveal. Let's find the bit that's not sticky, and that is our blood moon. And that's part of the reason I put the tangerine tango down here, is so that this was a brighter colour than down here. I could probably actually do, this is the tangerine tango with just adding a wee bit more there, because it's a bit too close to the orange at the top. There we are. Right, so that's that. Now I need my, what I'm going to call crows. Which of course aren't. And I've got these on a D block only because I happen to have a D block around. So, Memento black, you could use basic black. But again, I happen to have my Memento around. And then just stamp. And it's nice to have at least one of them over the moon, so that you can actually see what's going on, and it then helps bring out the others. Let's cover that up because I'm already covered in ink, so let's try not to make it any worse than it is. So who would have thought High Tide would come out in a Halloween project? But there we go. And then just need to, no, not that. Oh, there we are. Knew I had a spare piece of pumpkin pie. So I need my brain. I need my insert, because I shouldn't have put away my Memento, because I need it still. So I'm just going to take the rat. I'm actually going to pop him on the other end. You could use an A block for this, but I actually quite like using the bigger block. It gives you a better hold. So I'm just going to stamp the rat in the bottom corner of the insert. Just clean that up. And as I say, you could use the basic black rather than Memento. Do remember, if you use basic black, it will stain your stamps a bit. They are still usable, but it will stain them. So it'll make them black, which it's worth bearing that in mind if you're doing any two-step stamping, because then you won't be able to see through, which is kind of the point of two-step stamping. So just ink that up. That's better. And down. That's that. And pop that back. Right, so that's that all done. Don't need the Memento anymore. What I do need is some tear and tape and my card base. There we go. Right, let's get rid of... Actually, I'm just going to blast that with my first setting of my heat tool. So, I don't know if you could... Oh, sorry, that was a bit sudden. Can you see that there's a 0, a 1 and a 2? So the 1 is perfect for just drying off where you put a lot of ink down. It's perfect just to blast to get that last bit dry. It's not vital for this, but it's just worth bearing in mind. So I'm going to pop this on the inside of my card with a bit of snail. That's that done. Now this, I need to put the gate over the front. Now when I did the first one, I actually used the sticky back sheet. I stuck it on the back of the cardstock before I put it through the scissors, through the Big Shot, and then I've realised, of course, that it didn't really need it. In fact, I think it was too flat, so I think it's going to be better to not do that for this. But if you want it to be completely flat, you can, of course, do that. And tear and tape, which I can't see for looking at. This fits beautifully down the side of the flap, or down the flap, I should say. And just tear that off, and same again on this side. Pop that away. And try and find the end, which is always a challenge for me. It's always worth, if you're struggling to get the end released, just give it a good press, and then it's easier to get off. So I've released one side and taken the other side off, and that's so that I can. Let's get rid of that. So woo, flying card. Right, so I'm just going to line up the bottom of my card with the bottom of my die cut, and also get the crease in the right place. Oops. Fold that over and round to the back, and then just fold that round. And there we are, and I actually prefer that look. I think the original was just too flat, and I like that depth. So there we are. Flag the end of my Happy Halloween, ideally straight. That's better. So just cut up the middle and notch out to make your flag, and then I'm going to pop that down there, and again, as I've got tear and tape about, I will use tear and tape. Needs to be about there. Ooh, tear, tear, tear and tape, tear. And shall I be brave and cut it first? No, I won't. I'm not brave. Why would I think I'm brave? Good grief. Right. Okay. So just up from the bottom, just pop that down and then turn to the back and trim straight up. And then this needs to go on here. So, favourite glue. Ooh, preferably without sticking it to your work surface. Just make sure you are in the corners because they are a little lumpier. But you really don't need too much. How many times have I said that? I don't know. Lots. Let's give it a good press. I would normally do this from the front, but because we've got that detailed die on the front, I don't want to run the risk of creasing it. So there we go. Those are my 2 Halloween cards, my final Halloween project for you. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the series. If you would like to see more, I will be starting Christmas any day now. And for those of you who asked for the box that I did for our team event, I will show you how I made it. It's quite involved. I have to do a lot of die cutting first, otherwise the video will be about 3 hours. But I will show you how to do that. I will try and make that one of the first projects I do on my Christmas series. Anyway, if you need any of the products, they are linked below, or you can hop over to my online store via my blog. The measurements will be on my blog. If you do need any products, it would be a great help if you could, if you're in the UK, purchase from my online store. Then I can bring you more of my absolute madness. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And I will see you again very soon. And so for the last time, whoa!